Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is our second ever LinkedIn Live at coLeague and the beginning of our summer video series about our model, the employee hierarchy of needs. So we're really glad that you're here. And if you're not joining us live, we're really glad that you're watching this. We're really excited to share this model with you more deeply than we've ever done. It's a part of how we do business, and we wanted to be able to share all the details of that with you so that you might be able to apply it to your business as well. So we'll be here for just about half an hour. And if you have questions, you can put those questions in the LinkedIn Live, and Amethyst Green, who's part of the coLeague team, will get those to me. But just a heads up, there is about a 1 minute delay between when I'm speaking in the software that we're using and when you actually see it on LinkedIn Live. So that's just a heads up that there is a bit of a delay. So if you ask a question, we'll get to it, but it might be another minute or two. Okay. So again, thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Braver, and I'm the COO of coLeague, but part of my role at coLeague is also product development, and I had the pleasure of getting to work on our first real product, the talent diagnostic, last year. And as a part of developing that talent diagnostic, we sort of uncovered a model that we call the employee hierarchy of needs that we're going to dive into today. And if you don't know what coLeague is, this is your first time encountering us. At coLeague, we bring people experts to mission-driven organizations, freeing up leaders to focus on your most mission-critical priorities. And we do that in three ways. There's probably more, but we'll keep it to three here today. First and foremost, we embed fractional people leaders in organizations. If you don't know what a fractional leader is, that's someone who works on an interim, part-time basis for an organization, but in the capacity like they are in a full-time role. So we might have a chief people officer embedded in an organization for 60 hours a month. So they are that organization's chief people officer, but they've only have working with them a fraction of the time, if that makes sense. The second thing that we do, often in conjunction with placing fractional leaders in organizations, is consulting and support on specific projects. So if a client comes to us and wants an analysis of their compensation model, or they want a new performance management system, we have a whole network, not only of people leaders, but also experts in their field in every area of HR and talent that you can think of. So we might place that person as a fractional leader also doing a project, or we might bring someone in just to work on a project. And then lastly, our latest product, which we're really excited about, is called coLeague On Call. And that's an on-demand HR subscription service for really small organizations who don't even need a fractional leader, but they do want expert level support when they need it. And so coLeague On Call sort of sits in between I've Googled it and I'm calling a lawyer. So it's more advanced than Googling it or even using an AI agent, but it's not as expensive and honestly as not useful as calling the lawyer. The lawyer is the last step in any process. So coLeague On Call, we're really excited about it. I really hope that you'll go to our website and check it out. But today we're here to talk about the employee hierarchy of needs. And like I said, the employee hierarchy of needs is a model that helps us really center people in our people strategy, our talent strategy, and our infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure and talent strategy, we're talking about something really specific. So we all know what organizational strategy is, right? Like how we're going to go about achieving our mission. But talent strategy is the overall approach to attracting, engaging, developing, and retaining staff in your organization. And those also could be the choice to not retain, or the choice to open a new role, and all those sorts of things. The fundamental strategy is the organization's approach to how it deals with staff and talent in the organization. And then talent infrastructure, when we say that, we're referring to all of the systems, the processes, the platforms, even the software that enable the organization to attract, engage, develop, and retain staff in your organization. So those two things are usually very intertwined, but the infrastructure often comes in layers, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit today, where your strategy is probably somewhat static, depending on the maturity of your organization, and that infrastructure might change and grow with the setup of the organization. So when an organization is putting together their talent strategy and infrastructure, they might work on a model like this. You don't need to zoom in and try to write these things down. This is just an example. It's a model that we put together for our client when they were thinking about how to set up their talent organization and how their talent team and organization would support the rest of the organization. And so, as you can see, there's like a huge list. There's a million things. And as we were developing the talent diagnostic, which is a way to help leaders and organizations figure out the order in which to implement their talent strategy and roadmap, we were like, there's literally a million things. We can make an infinite list of all the various pieces of infrastructure that you need in order to make the team work. And it's different if you're a 6-person organization or 60 or 600. All of these questions that are asked here in this model are still relevant regardless of your size. But there's a lot of different models that you can apply when you're deciding what kind of talent infrastructure you want. How do you want the team organized? How do you want it set up? Who's handling what, et cetera. And in very small organizations, these things are often being fulfilled not by a full-time talent person, but by an operations leader or the executive director. And so here, if you went to a talent consultant and said, we want to have a really great talent setup, they might give you a checklist that has all of these things on it. But then I think you might ask the very obvious question, okay, but like, where do I start? And that also we when we talk to clients, they often have some things set up in their talent organization. They might have an HR information system or HRIS. They might have an ATS or an applicant tracking system for hiring, for talent acquisition. They might have a platform for learning and development. They might have a platform for performance and feedback and one-on-ones. There's lots of different pieces of infrastructure that might exist. And so they might have a second list of things that they want to implement, like a new compensation model or a new competency model for the organization, new core competencies. And let's say they have their whole list of what exists and then a whole list of what doesn't yet exist. And it feels impossible to just do it all. And so the question is, where do I start? And so, we think that you should start where when you're thinking about your employees and what do they need, right? So obviously you want to start with the basics first, and probably a lot of organizations already have basics in place, like that HRIS, like those basic things, payrolls going out on time, all the basic things exist. But I think a lot of organizations and a lot of leaders would answer the question, like, what do employees need, by starting with, structure, right? We need processes. We need talent systems and structures in place that support our employee needs and goals. It's really obvious, right? Like, you got to have that stuff in place in order for for anything else to happen, right? You don't want to just be doing things on a whim. You want these structures in place so that everyone understands what they're supposed to be doing. And of course, everybody wants autonomy, right? The number one thing when people complain about their experience at work, they're almost always talking about micromanagement. They don't want people, up in their business telling them what to do. They want to be able to effectively and independently pursue their goals and have some say in the future. And autonomy also means they're able to do it without needing a lot of help. So it's not just that you're not interfering, but also the organization has set up the structures and information and everything such that you can get what you need in order to do your job. So autonomy isn't just without management, it's also without there being a lot of barriers to the various things that you might need in your job. And of course, I think a lot of leaders would say, well, we have to think about motivation and incentive. Like, we have to think about the future. So incentive in this case isn't specifically how a lot of businesses talk about incentives being like bonuses, essentially. But in this case, we're thinking about motivating toward the future. So employees know what's next for them and they can get the support and resources that they need to get there. So that's where your things like career models and various things come into play, where an employee can look at a list and say like, okay, like if I work on this now and I take on these responsibilities, then I can think about a promotion or what might be next for me here, a new opportunity. So, when you map those things to the various aspects of talent infrastructure and the talent strategy, uh, it pretty clear all the various things that need to be in place in order to hit these things. So we need reviews, we need somebody to be in charge of HR, we need there to be learning and development in order for there to be career pathways, et cetera, et cetera. And please, like, this isn't a perfect list, this is just an example of how an organization might think about these things. And so you might be wondering, there's some stuff missing here. Like, if this is the talent infrastructure, it seems like there might be some pretty serious stuff missing. And if I was an employee, I might also be wondering where the rest of the stuff is. And that's because when we think about what employees really need, we're also thinking about more than just the structures. And that's what the primary thing of what we're going to talk about here today in employee hierarchy of needs, because it turns out this is the top of the pyramid, not the bottom. And a lot of organizations and leaders start here. They think about like, we got to attract and retain. We got to make sure that people, know how to get promoted. All those things are true. And they are certainly the things that employees are asking for. But I feel very confident based on experience and all the research that we've done, that if you just have these things in place, there's a chance that those models won't even land, that your performance management system nobody might even use it. And so that's because there's two entire aspects of this hierarchy that are missing. So when we think about what do employees need, it seems really basic and obvious, but when you think about, well, employees are people, right? They're humans, and employee needs are human needs. So, when we were working on this model, I went back to the drawing board and like, okay, so what do the experts say about this? If employee needs are human needs, one of my favorite sort of pop business books is this book called Drive. And in this book, Daniel Pink says, the research shows that people, you can't really motivate them that well with money beyond a certain point. And the thing that motivates people is actually having a strong purpose. So like feeling like they're making a difference in the world, having autonomy. So the ability to get things done without interference that we already talked about, and mastery. Mastery is going to be less applicable here in our basic talent systems and structures, but it's still relevant, and when you're thinking about motivating people generally. And so here we add one layer down to our pyramid, which is purpose, right? Well, most of our clients and probably anyone watching today is in a mission-driven organization. So again, it seems like a no-brainer, right? Like people need a purpose for why they're doing the work. But when we dive into these individual sections in the rest of this series, when we talk about purpose, we're going to be talking about a lot more than just a mission. We're going to be talking about a personal connection to the actual work and understanding that the work that you do as an individual is connected to the larger goals and strategy of the organization. Because your mission might be so big that it feels impossible to solve, and you are chipping away at it. And so folks need to feel a connection to the work that's actually happening, the goals of the organization, because people will really feel pretty listless if they feel like the work they're doing is make work. Like they're doing something and technically it's related to the mission, but they can't seem to connect it to what's actually going on in the organization. And so when we're thinking about what employees need, we talked about structure, right? There's talent systems and structures in place. We talked about autonomy. Employees can independently pursue their goals and know about the type of future that's possible. We talked about incentives, so employees know what's next for them, how they can get the support and resources they need to get there. But we're adding below it purpose. So employees know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how their work connects to the bigger picture. And again, purpose is going to contain things that you might not expect. Like, for instance, a really good job description is connected to an employee's purpose. So they know like what it is they're actually responsible for, why they're doing what they're doing in terms of how it connects to the larger team and to the larger organization. And so, this feels like we're really getting somewhere, right? If we're thinking about employee needs, we know that if they have a strong purpose, they've got that autonomy, they have the structures in place to support them, they know about the future. But I think any leader that's listening today um, knows that even if all those things are still in place, and you've done all of the systems and processes perfectly and everybody's connected to their mission, employees are still very anxious and they're still feel can feel overwhelmed and all sorts of issues that make it very difficult for them to focus on getting their work done. So when we go back, uh, you know, to the drawing board, well, we've got purpose. Employees are still feeling away. Like, what else could they possibly need? I hear this from frustrated leaders all the time. Like, I don't, like they've got everything they need. Like, what else could we possibly do? And so this time we're going to go even deeper. We're going to go back to the drawing board, back to a different kind of expert, and answer that question again and thinking again, like, if employee needs are human needs, what are some human needs that we might be missing? So we're all familiar with, I assume we're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow was a psychologist and it was operating in the 40s and 50s, and he published an article in 1943 in Psychology Today about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it was about the types of needs that need to be fulfilled in order for humans to be able to pursue, quote, higher level things. Now, this model is not perfect. It doesn't apply to every community, but it's a useful start to help think about what people need in order to be successful in their lives and to feel like they are successful in their lives. I like this model next to it, which is a version of the same model that shows how people's needs intensify or de-intensify based on where they are in their personal development. And so their personal development is high enough that they've managed all of the things in the lower part of the pyramid. And so they have a deeper and stronger need over time for some of these higher level things on the pyramid. Again, not a perfect model. I don't know enough about the rest of the research and everything to be able to say that, this is really a thing, but it's a really great place to start to understand what we might be missing in our model when we think about employee needs and human needs. So, we see at the bottom of this pyramid physiological needs. So in this case, that's, shelter and food and sleep and those sorts of things. While there are, of course, exceptions, generally organizations don't feed and house their employees. Now, they do provide the resources often that lead to that employee being able to do those things, but they're not directly responsible for housing or meals in most circumstances. So if you move up one level, it's starting to get interesting, right? So we're probably not going to move further up in the organizational stuff. We're probably not going to go for love and esteem and self-actualization. I think that's things that folks can manage on their own, based on their own values and their own desires and their own goals. But when it comes to work, it seems like there is something here in terms of safety. And so when we think about the next level down of our pyramid, our hierarchy, so we've got purpose, what we really need is a foundation of safety. And so remember, we started just with this top stuff that suddenly you realize how much more there is underneath the surface. And so when we talk about safety, it's easy to sort of default to, like, they're not on a construction site, right? They don't need a construction hat. They're not worried about, a tornado coming to their job. Maybe they are, depending on where they live. But generally, when we talk about safety at work, we do mean physical safety, but we also mean psychologically safe. And when we dig into safety as a concept in the next video in the series, we'll talk a lot more about psychological safety and its concepts, and a bit of a departure from the traditional definition that might be more valuable to you. We'll go very deep into this. This is the topic that's very close to my heart, and I think it might be very valuable for a lot of folks. But here we're thinking about, Are they physically safe? Are they psychologically safe and confident that their employment is legal and secure? And by that, I mean the most that you can do to protect someone's physical safety is to make sure they get paid on time, to make sure that their benefits are administered correctly so that they have what they need to take care of their family, that their employment is legal and secure. Not secure in the sense that they can't lose their job, but secure and legal in the sense that all of the compliance things have happened behind the scenes and they're not going to get a surprise from the IRS. And they're not going to get a surprise like, oh, you missed this paperwork, therefore your taxes are going to be really different this year. The sort of things that can really disrupt someone because they thought that stuff was taken care of. They thought they were safe. And then suddenly they feel really unsafe because if that mistake was made, then what other mistakes might be out there that now I need to worry about a thing I didn't think I had to worry about. And so that can be really distressing for folks. And so when you people think about psychological safety, and like I said, we'll dig further into this, it's often treated as a luxury, something that comes after you have everything else in place. Then you can think about, the dynamic on teams and how people work together. And that's true. Like those things can be specific to teams and individual dynamics. And the traditional definition of psychological safety is about interpersonal interactions. But when I'm talking about psychological safety in regards to the hierarchy of needs, employee hierarchy of needs, I'm talking about psychological safety provided by the organization, meaning, like I said, all those things are in place. They can reasonably speak up if they need to speak up. They are not going to be humiliated in the organization. Nothing really extreme is going to happen to them. They feel like it's a reasonable and safe place to be. And also they're physically safe. And every workplace is different for those needs, but not all workplaces are regulated. And so you might have to actually think about how do we make sure that they're safe. And of course that their employment is legal and secure. And so the thing to keep in mind when we think about that safety is not a luxury, and again, we'll dig so much more into this in the next video in our series. But do my employees feel safe and secure enough to relax and focus on their work? I think that's the key here, is that it's not a luxury because getting stuff done is not a luxury, right? And if you want people to get stuff done, they need to be able to feel reasonable and calm. And is there anything that you as leaders, as organizations are doing to either to jeopardize that safety, or are you missing something? Is something not happening that is causing folks to feel destabilized or unsafe? I think, like I said, that one will be a fun one to dig further in. But the foundation that you need, in addition to the other things that everyone can name, like career models and all of that, is this foundation of purpose and safety. And what's really useful here is that if you get these things right, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a sec, but if you get these things right, you've earned a lot of leeway with your team, especially if you're a small organization. That if you make sure that they feel calm and secure, then you can be a little looser as you're figuring out the rest of your talent strategy and infrastructure. So I think that a lot of people are probably asking the question like, oh no, like what if I've already built my talent strategy and infrastructure and I didn't think about those things? Like, or we have some of them, like we have, obviously people are getting paid on time and people have what they need, but I don't know about how their specific goals are related to the larger organizational strategy. Like there's a lot of stuff missing. Well, you can rest assured that it's never too late, ever, to build a foundation of purpose and safety, even if you completely miss the boat. And I do suggest, when we dig in further, I will suggest that leaders be really transparent about this, that they realize that there's some stuff missing and they're going to go back to the basics to make sure everything is in place. And so that might give you, again, some leeway to pause on some other initiatives that are going forward, like a new complicated system of some kind. And you might be able to back off a bit from that to focus on, like, does everyone have a really strong job description? Do they know what they're actually supposed to be doing? Are there ways for employees to safely give feedback about their manager, like those kinds of things, so they don't feel like they're going to get punished? It's never too late to go back and put those things in place. And so, as I said before, just reiterating that if you nail these things, I promise you'll get a lot more grace from your team as you build the rest of your talent strategy and infrastructure. So that way, when they ask, like, when is this coming? When is this coming? You can have an answer. But the opposite might happen where if you are saying, we're going to have this and we're going to have this, we're going to have a new compensation model. There's a consultant coming in to build a new performance management system. And the employee is like, okay, but like, great, I'll get a review, but what are they basing that on? Like, do we even have a rubric for measuring performance? Like, how am I supposed to talk to my manager about the future if I don't even know what my job is? Or I signed up for this job and now I'm doing all these other things that I didn't sign up for. And so I feel really stressed out that like I want to ask for promotion, but I'm barely able to get my job done now. But that's because I'm working 2 jobs, like all of these things. And the we're going to use an example of what I was just talking about to demonstrate in our last couple of minutes what applying the employee hierarchy of needs looks like in person or in action. So very common, right? Employees saying, I'm leaving because I don't know how to get promoted, or they're really focusing with their manager on how do I get promoted? How do I get promoted? And that can feel very frustrating for managers and leaders who are like, there's not another job for you to be promoted into. Like, we're a 12-person team, we're a 20-person team. Like, there isn't a different set of work for you to do. You want promoted. Like, what does that even mean? And often, like anything else, there's the like what we hear, what we're experiencing from employees, like what they're actually saying and doing. And then there's the whole underneath the iceberg of what's really going on. And the employee hierarchy of needs helps us go a little bit lower down with the iceberg so we can get to the root of what's really the problem. And so if we didn't have the employee hierarchy of needs and we heard employees say over and over again and put in their engagement surveys that like what they really care about is career pathways, how do I get promoted? It might turn out that there's a whole lot of other stuff that is being unanswered, but they want to sound professional. They are using the vocabulary that they have to talk about their needs. They might not know about these other things, but likely there's something maybe going on with their performance management. Maybe they disagree with the feedback that they're getting about their role. My guess is there's almost always a compensation aspect to this where folks actually just need more money and they want to ask for more money, but they don't know how. And the only way most people know how to get more money is to get promoted. And so that's what they're ready to talk about is getting promoted. And they don't actually understand the complexity of that within the larger context of an organization. They might have job scope creep and they feel like if I get promoted, then I'll get paid to cover the job I'm already doing, or I could get the title that matches the work that I'm doing. They might have resentment toward their manager because maybe they're doing a lot and they can't see what their manager is doing. Maybe they're frustrated with their peers. They feel like they do double the work of one of their peers, so they should get promoted. They might be just having money stress. And that will cause a lot of people to ask for a promotion, even if they're not ready, because again, that's the only way they know to get more money. Or there might just be some other pile of life stress. We all know how unbelievably distracting everything that's happening in the world is right now. And so again, if you're like thinking about your future and how do I protect my future? Well, I got to get more money. How do I get more money? I got to get promoted. And so here we have maybe someone who is stressed about money and doing 2 people's jobs. And the only thing they know how to do is ask for a promotion. So when you take the employee hierarchy of needs into account, it really helps you refocus on what are the things that we could be doing for this staff member if I could really understand what their challenge actually is. So we go further down the pyramid. And we don't have time to go deeply into here, but I will go deeply into it when we go to the rest of the video series. We'll talk about the various questions and statements that need to be answered and agreed with in order to demonstrate that each level of the employee hierarchy of needs is solidly in place, freeing you up to move on to more complex talent initiatives that will land better if folks have these other things in place first. So just as a recap of the employee hierarchy of needs, we have a basis of safety, where they feel physically and psychologically safe. Employees have a strong sense of purpose. They know how what they're doing connects to the larger goals and strategy and mission of the organization. There are transparent talent systems and structures in place that actually support employees achieve what they want to achieve. They're able to do so relatively autonomously, meaning without interference and without undue barriers to success. And of course, they're able to think about the future. They know what's next for them, and they know how to get the support and resources they need in order to get there. So I mentioned many times that this is part of a whole series. And the next Summer Tuesday, where we'll dig into safety as a concept on the employee hierarchy of needs, is July 1st. And then every other Tuesday after that for the rest of the summer. If you want to learn more, you can reach out directly to me, Sarah at coLeaguePartners.com. That's Sarah with an H and coLeague with one L. And of course, you can catch this video on our website, and all of the rest of the LinkedIn Live webinars will also be both on LinkedIn, but also eventually posted on our website where anybody can watch them. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time. It was a real pleasure. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to learn more about this model, if you think that we could help your organization get some of these things in place. Thank you so much.